This is your captain speaking. Welcome to another episode of the BRUISE News. What the fuck is up? What is up? I'm back. Let's do this. Let's get right into it. Let's get into this shit. I have it right here. Where is this? Boom. Let's get into the card because we have an insane UFC 259 going on right now. It's UFC 259. We're going to start with the prelims, go on to the main card. Going to talk a little bit about it here and there, and then we will get into my predictions, how I think some of the fights are going to go, and then you can, take from there. So first off, on the big prelim, the first fight on the prelims that is going to be interesting is Benavidez versus Zaskarov. Now this fight is interesting because Zaskarov tends to be a little bit more of a wrestler, but Benavidez has a wrestling background. He can strike, but I think that he, as well as Zaskarov, are kind of on the way out. I do give the advantage to Ben standing, though, as he's fought the champion recently. He fought Cejudo. He actually beat Cejudo at one point, so it's interesting to see where he kind of goes from here, but I don't really think that he has a chin to be fighting at flyweight anymore because he doesn't seem to have that, and flyweights tend to hit a lot more often, so you can end up seeing a knockout possibly there. Askarov is decent on the ground, so the fight's kind of up in the air, but I would give the advantage to Benavidez. The second fight that I can't even believe is on the prelims in the first place is Dominick Cruz. You heard that right. Versus Kenny. Now, I don't understand how Dominick Cruz ended up on the prelims, but he's a fight, to be on there. They have to watch it in the first place. Plus, the main card is just absolutely insane in the first place. Like, the entire pay-per-view portion of the UFC card is nuts from top to bottom. Like, there's not a bad fight on this card at all. So, it will be interesting regardless. Anyways, Kenny is on the up and up. He's a good fighter, but I don't think that he's well-rounded enough to be in the octagon with Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz just fought the champion, arguably to a bad stoppage. It kind of splits both ways with how that goes, but I do give the advantage to Dominick Cruz. I think Dominick Cruz is way too good, but he's getting up there too. So eventually, with some of these guys that have been fighting for so long, he was the inaugural UFC bantamweight champion. He carried the other title from WEC over, so he's been around for a long time, dealt with a lot of injuries. So it's tough to kind of say sometimes with fighters like that, but it's Dominick Cruz. What else could you possibly expect other than Dominick Cruz to have, an amazing fight? He could be not on this and fighting for the title at some point, and nobody would even bat an eye at that. Just coming off a loss to the champion, that's the way that it goes. Well, Cejudo's no longer the champion, but that's the way she goes. So the first fight on the pay-per-view, so those last two fights, the Benavidez and the Dominick Cruz fights, those are on the prelims. So now once the pay-per-view is started, we come into the first matchup, and it's Makhachev versus Drew Dober. Now, if people don't know who Drew Dober is, he's a guy who went the distance against Magomed Sharapov, and the guy is an actually, I'm a liar. It was Zabit. He went to a very close, he almost had it actually, like, it was kind of a toss-up, but at the end of the third round, a lot of people were kind of feeling like if that fight would have been longer, then Dober would have come back and win that fight. So the dude is a dog. The guy can fight. He's a good scrapper. He can do all of that stuff very, very well. On the other hand, Makhachev is a monster. He's at a Khabib's camp. He trains at AKA with DC. His wrestling's fucking top-notch. He has really good striking, so he's a threat in that featherweight division, whether you want to spin it any way that you'd like or not. Both these guys, I would like to see move up to lightweight, but lightweight is so stacked. But it's just, there's a weird conundrum with the UFC titles right now, and they keep plopping the title on too many people, and people are able to hold it up, but I don't really want to get into that right now, and it's definitely something that would be good in another episode. So I'm planning on doing that again. If anybody was curious, I thought that I would just jump back into this because I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but not to get bittersweet or anything like that. I do have Makhachev winning the fight, probably by decision. I think that Dober is way too resilient to get knocked out or anything like that. Possibly submission, but I don't really see that. The AKA guys aren't as efficient at submissions as you'd think they would be, especially with that strong wrestling background, but they tend to use the wrestling to set up knockouts. So they're extremely efficient, but I do have Makhachev winning, probably by unanimous decision. It's going to be a good fight regardless. I skipped the fight by accident, and this is one fight that I'm probably, aside from the main event, this is probably the fight that I'm most excited about, and it's Santos versus Rakic. Now, if you don't know who Thiago Santos is, the dude is an absolute monster. He's fought in welterweight, he's fought in middleweight, and he's fought at light heavyweight now. He is one knockout short of being tied, with the knockout current champion, which is Derek Lewis, at 12. He has 11. So he's probably gonna, either tie the record or surpass it at some point. The dude is an absolute monster. He has actually knocked out Jan, the current champion, at light heavyweight. So, he could be champion even. I sort of thought that he would have smushed Glover Teixeira, but Glover's been super resilient, and there's something going on with him. Who knows if he's on gear or something like that, but Glover has, won his last 4 fights or something like that. Not to get too off topic, but Santos is a definite threat, not only for the title, but for Rakic, who's a fantastic up-and-comer, very good knockout artist. I do think that Rakic is too technical and too big for Santos, but that's not to say that the threat of Santos being able to land a crazy head kick, because the dude throws, like, he slings heat. I don't know if anybody remembers his fight against Jimmy Manuwa. He had a crazy, if you haven't seen that fight, it's a fantastic fight to go back and look. Their first and second round were just nuts until Santos ended up landing a crazy right hand and knocking Manuwa out. But it was an absolute slugfest. Santos went 5 rounds with the champ. He was kicking I thought that there was a chance that he could have won that fight personally by decision. Jones ended up getting the UD, but he ended up fighting with like a torn ACL in both legs. The dude's a monster. So you can't really argue when it comes to that. I do have Rakic winning the fight though, but you never know with that fight. KO, probably first or second round. For the first of the title fights, I believe it's Yan versus Sterling. Now, this fight is very interesting because Sterling has come out and said that he's going to be using his wrestling primarily. But I think that Yan, is way too good at wrestling. He's a crazy Russian wrestling background with the Sambo, and his striking is insane. He absolutely walks through people striking and just has no regard for them, and he's so tough. I don't see him losing the fight to Sterling just based on how... Sterling is a very, he's a mobile fighter. He likes to move around a lot, and I don't think that style works well with a guy who's super tough. When they have good movements like that, they tend to try to move laterally, and they walk into punches, and Yan has a really, really good right and left hook. Both his hooks are absolutely insane, and I gotta stop saying "and" already, jeez. I just think that his striking is going to be too much for Sterling, and I don't think that Sterling will be able to get Yan down fast enough for it to impede Yan's ability to get off with his hands. I think that Yan's going to walk away with this fight. I've called him the pronunciation of his name different every single time I've said it, just if anybody was wondering. Anyways, I have Yan winning the fight, just did it again, by second round TKO. I believe that he's going to land the knockout shot in the second round after getting to him. Sterling's wrestling isn't going to work, and he's going to end up getting the knockout, or he'll choke him out in the second round. But I would almost guarantee that the second round is where this fight ends. But I've been wrong before. The next fight is Nunes versus Anderson. I don't think that the women's division in any of the weight classes it has a lot of depth to it. Not to take anything away from the ladies, but I just feel like the sport for female MMA hasn't been around long enough for the girls to really be able to take off the way that they have. We've seen some prospects, but they haven't been able to keep up with the veterans of the game, but we will see that soon. In the next few years, we will see females take off in the UFC, and it will be a completely different story. Other than that, Nunes is way too well-rounded. I think Megan's tall. Her striking is good, but I don't see her being able to beat Amanda in any way, shape, or form, aside from possibly clipping her with, you know, what could be described as a lucky shot. I don't really believe that there's lucky shots in MMA. I think that just sometimes it happens the way that it happens. I don't think that that would mean that Megan is better than Amanda. I think that Amanda is the best, you know, female fighter right now outside of Shevchenko. I'm also very fond of Rose as well. I think that she is one of the best fighters, and hopefully when she fights Weili Zhang, which just got announced recently, that fight stays focused and Rose can take the title back. For the main event, we have Adesanya versus Jan versus Jan. This fight is extremely interesting for many reasons. First of all, is he moving up to light heavyweight? There's questions about him being on gear and steroids because of the fucking titty. There's lots, you know. If you look at the 2020 that Jan had, he went from being ranked 8th and being an underdog to Corey Anderson at the beginning of 2021, or in the beginning of 2020, in February. He was ranked number 8th and was underdog to Corey Anderson. By the end of 2020, he was the champion. So it just shows you how much of a turnaround that people can have when you change a camp or you change your style or you change something. Now, people make arguments about Jan getting lucky to the title because he fought Reyes. Reyes went the distance with Jones, but we know now that Jones wasn't motivated at light heavyweight, and I feel like you have to take that argument out of it. Reyes was a young guy. You know, Jones hasn't fought in a lot of guys that were that size, and, you know, Reyes had a good game plan going in, but there was never really a threat of either one knocking each other out, and Jones really just outpointed him, but there's a lot of arguments that Jones lost that fight. When Jan fought Reyes, on the other hand, Jan primarily trains with southpaws, so it means that all of those right hands, because the counter to the right, or to the left straight, is the right hand, the right hook, or the right overhand itself. And it's the perfect punch for the straight left, and Jan, you know, optimally set that up perfect by engaging with the right body kick. And when the right body kick happens, the circling happens, and once you start to circle away from that, you know, you start to circle into power shots, and that's exactly what happened. It was the left body kick, sorry. Jan was opening up with the left body kick. He bruised up Reyes' left side real good, or right side, sorry. And then as Reyes started to become aware of the left body kicks because they were starting to hurt him, he started circling into the power hand. And then every time that he would throw the left hand, the left straight, or the left hook, he would get countered. And that's how Jan won the fight. One reason is because he was better that night. The other reason being that, you know, he primarily trains with southpaws, so he's used to fighting guys like that. Now, Adesanya is obviously just like an absolute prodigy. He knocked out he won 9 fights in 3 days, scored 6 knockouts back in his kickboxing days, which was, you know, 7 years ago now. The dude has walked through absolutely everybody. I thought that Costa fight was going to be super scary, but he ended up, you know, surpassing every test. That Gastelum fight, the UFC, they just posted a video where it's like a build up to the fight, and it shows Adesanya talking about his Gastelum fight, and in the 5th round he comes out and he says, "You're not beating me. I'm ready to die in here." And it was just so wholesome how, you know, because he doesn't need to be like that. You don't see that. Like, how many times have you seen that from a UFC fighter? His homages to Naruto Shippuden and the characters inside the game, like he's a fan of anime. He's a big fan of anime. He just believes in himself to an extent that isn't necessarily cocky, but it's, you know, he believes he's magic, and that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily have when it comes to passion in this stuff. So when I look at Adesanya, I hope that he isn't on gear, and I hope that he isn't taking steroids, and I hope he continues to climb and is showcasing his skills, and I hope that someday he gets to fight Jones, and I hope that he wins this fight, which leads me to my prediction. I think that Adesanya absolutely dismantles Jan Blachowicz in this fight. I don't think that Jan stands a chance, and that's not to necessarily discredit how Jan has gotten to the title. I just think that he is the victim of a certain amount of events. We saw this happen with Eddie Alvarez when he got the title, and then Conor got to him, and then Conor looked like an absolute killer at lightweight when Conor really wasn't as well-rounded as we've seen now. We've seen it before, you know, Matt Serra winning the title just the way that it was and his, you know, fluke stuff. It happens, and it doesn't take anything away from the fighter. It's just that I think that Jan is a mid-tier fighter, and I think that Adesanya has fought better guys than Blachowicz is. And I don't think that Blachowicz has anything that Adesanya won't be able to handle. Now, that's not to say that there aren't holes in Adesanya's game. I find when he fights in the pocket and he just leans back out of the way of the punches, I find that won't work at light heavyweight because he's not going to be tall enough to get away from the length of the arms. You know, like that's not going to work the same as it does in middleweight where you have a couple inches on everybody. There's other things like the power, the weight difference that he has to give up, like where guys are cutting from 220, 230 down to 205, and he wasn't even 200 pounds when he weighed in for the fight. So it's interesting to see. I do think that Adesanya will dismantle him. I don't think that there's really any way that Jan wins this fight other than leaping for a takedown and getting Adesanya down and wearing him out on the ground until the second or third round and then taking him out that way. But I don't think that Jan's going to do that. I think that Jan is primarily a striker. He's going to try and strike with him. And by the time that he realizes that he's not in the same realm as Adesanya is in terms of talent and in terms of striking ability, because Adesanya is a vet in the game. He's been striking way longer. He has a knowledge of the way that striking is that cannot be taught in books. You know, it can't be. It's just like Conor, to be honest, with his just natural ability to see how range is with these punches and kicks coming at him and being able to amplify that and put the pressure on. They have an aura about them that makes them intimidating, and then when you add the skill factor in and their ability to do everything they can inside of that, you know, Adesanya said it himself that sometimes he imagines himself doing things, and instead of just imagining it, he just does them, and that's the way that it goes. Anyways, Adesanya, I think that Adesanya gets a pretty early knockout, probably late first round, early second round. I believe that's the way that the fight's going to go. I want to thank everybody for coming and watching the videos again. Sorry to just jump out of it. My phone's about to die, so I gotta close it up a little bit. But I appreciate everybody for watching the video. I will be making videos again, and I am determined to keep doing them this time around. I'm very happy to be back. I've been working on a lot of things, been working on myself, going to school now. I'm kind of starting to get to a place where, you know, I'm doing better, and I think it's time to start doing this again because I wanted to do this before. Anyways, thank you. Those are my predictions for the fight. Remember, I got Ben, Cruz, Ratchik, Makhachev, Jan, Nunes, and Adesanya for the fight. Thank you, and make sure that you have a great day.